Questions to ask in a podcast interview. Well, I have some ideas for you, and I know that there's the fear of, what am I going to say? Can I be interesting? Am I talking too much? Am I not giving my guests enough room to breathe? And the thing that I wish I'd known going in was this idea of the rhythm. That some of your guests, you'll ask them one question and then they'll talk for 5 minutes, and that makes your job really easy. And you might not be able to get a word in, but they'll give you so much to chew on, so many ideas. And then sometimes you'll have guests that are the opposite, and they'll just answer your questions in little 30-second sound bites. And I used to prefer the quick 30-second soundbite type of person because there's always this back and forth and witty banter, and I felt like every episode was unique, but it's so exhausting and the time just seems to go to a crawl. And so as long as you're aware of that everyone's different, that some people will answer in short spurts and some people will answer and take up half of your show with just one or two questions, that's something to keep in mind. Don't get annoyed about it and don't try to fight it, just go with it. It's kind of like the same idea of if someone is a fast talker, do your best to maybe speak a little faster than you normally would. And if they're a slow talker, then slow down slightly just to kind of meet them in the middle where they're at. But anyway, what do you ask a podcast guest? Well, here's the thing is I don't think you need any preparation. I know that it's easy to get nervous and think that you need to do a pre-call and things like that. And if that's your personality, great. Here's what I like to do. Here's the way I like to think of it is that your podcast interview is a rise to a peak and then kind of going back down to the conclusion. And when you kick off the podcast interview, usually your guest will give you a bio. And if you do what I do, which is I use Calendly to schedule the appointment for the podcast. And in that Calendly scheduling, the form they fill out asks for their name and their email address. And then there's a place for them to paste in their bio. But then I also like to ask for 5 questions that I should ask them. And that has been such a helpful lifesaver. And if you want to know more about any of this, the place to go is dfypodcast.com/free. But use Calendly, use a scheduler. If you don't, it'll save you so much time. It'll have you avoid having to hire a full-time person just to schedule things. So you ask for 5 questions for you to ask them. And they might not be very good questions, and you might not even use them, but they're good to have. But anyway, you start off with this interview with reading their bio, and then they'll feel a little like their ego's been massaged. They'll feel pretty good about you kind of talking them up. And because the point of them being there on your show is for you to make them look good, and then for them to demonstrate some higher value and expertise. And at the end, once they've earned it, then you can plug some resources, plug their website. That's kind of the dance that you're playing. So you start with the bio, and then my favorite go-to jumping off point is to ask about their current passion or project. I ask about what have they been up to the last 6 months or so, or what has them fired up currently, or what big change have they gone through in the past 12 months. Just what are you working on now? What has you super excited? And so that's the beginning of the interview. And then let's consider that pretty straightforward, right? Bio and then current passion or project. And then at the end of the interview, we said that you want to ask about a call to action, what a listener should do next after listening to the conversation, website, next steps, best advice, things like that. So let's get rid of half of the problem and just say the beginning is the bio and their current passion, the end is a call to action. And what do you tackle in the middle? Well, usually just from that asking about their passion, there might be like they say something and then something comes to mind and you have a conversation. But on the off chance that doesn't happen, because we've all been there where somebody says something and you're like, what do I say now in response? So if you're not sure what to say next, then I would ask, what's an easy win for someone in your industry? If you are talking with a gym owner, or someone like coaches, owners of gyms, you say, well, if someone out there has a struggling gym, then what's an easy win for someone out there to do that? Or if you're dealing with like a copywriter, right? What's an easy win for someone who is stuck on the words to place on their webpage? And the thing about these people is that even though they might have an app, or they might be a service provider, or they might be a coach, it's still good for them to teach the average listener how to do something on their own, and then either they might succeed in a small way and want to go to the next level and hire this person as a coach, or they might fail and then need this coach's help. So that's kind of the other game we're playing, is we're playing the game of be helpful, dispense advice, knowing that some listener out there might very well use it and then not need the expert that we're talking to. But we also want to think about, can we give a listener an easy win? That way they can get to step 1 and 2, and then they'll need this to contact this expert for steps 3 through 9. So ask about an easy win. Something else that can be fun is to ask about a struggle, ask about a failure. Those are the most interesting stories, and every podcast guest I've dealt with has had one. And the good thing about a failure is failures happened in the past. You can do a little bit of before and after. You can say, I really struggled, I really had a problem with this, and it is relatable, right? Someone who has had a problem in your industry with WordPress, like what's the biggest WordPress disaster that you have dealt with, or what was your biggest money disaster or mindset or emotional disaster, or where did you fail in a project or fail in one of your goals? It's like an interview question. It's fun to talk about the struggles and then how they overcame it, and maybe a different spin on that could be like a case study or a success story, and you can just word it like that. Do you have a fun case study or a success story where you have helped a client out? Someone came to you and said, help, I need help with my WordPress site, and you came and worked your magic. What was that like? What was their business like? What was the problem? And what did you do to fix it? So there's a few ideas for you. Start with the bio and current passion. In the middle, talk about easy wins, struggles, and case studies. And at the end, talk about the call to action, the next steps, things like that. And if you're really stuck, let me give you a couple of maybe spontaneous ideas to have in your back pocket, because you could dig deep into a sub question. Maybe they give you a big 3-minute long answer, and right in the middle there, you thought, oh, can you explain that part? Can we dig deeper into that? Something else I like to do is to recap what somebody said in their own words. And it's so hard to accept that this works, but if they say something and you understand it, just repeat what it is that they said, obviously not word for word, but in the way that you understood it. And they will feel so good, and they will think that you are a genius because you're thinking the same thoughts that they are, even though you are just saying what it is that they said. And sometimes I'll even word that as when you said this, when you told the story about how your dog died, this made me picture this, and this reminded me of that thing. And it's important to not go too much on a tangent and make it too much about you, but just restating what they said or digging deep into a sub point that they said, and maybe even just for clarification, or when you said this, I thought that. A couple more ideas for something to pull out of your back pocket. Ask, what is the number one mistake that you're seeing in your industry? And we can all think of that, and it's easy to mention because this is almost another easy win in disguise, and it's a good opportunity for this person, especially near the end of a podcast interview, to differentiate themselves from the average newbie, the average inexperienced person, or all those bad coaches out there. They can say, here's the difference. Here's why I'm one of the good guys. And another sort of go-to I might ask is, what advice would you give someone just starting out, right? What advice would you give to a person just starting out in voiceover? Or if we're interviewing, going back to the gym membership example, if someone is opening a new gym in their city, what advice would you give to someone like that? What advice would you give to a new real estate investor? You get the idea. So have a few of those questions in mind, but the big thing to remember is you're there to make your guests seem like a genius, and it's not hard to do because they are one of the few people that actually stepped up and stood up and took the leap and took the chance to talk to you personally. And you don't want to go on for too long. You want to leave people wanting more. So this is not a tutorial. You don't have to be comprehensive, exhaustive. Just give people a taste for some of the magic that can happen when this real estate investor coach talks about their stories or talks about the things to do and what not to do, and then once you've given people a taste, then promote their offer, promote their product, promote their podcast, and sometimes they'll just say, follow me on social media or LinkedIn, and I really like to really plug their website a couple more times more than they would want to, and it makes them a little embarrassed or squeamish, but it's a lot of fun, and I recommend you do it. I recommend that when you have a guest near the end and they might be a little shy about saying, oh, well, I've got this free report of this URL, then remember what that URL is and then repeat it a couple of times so that way it's almost an endorsement from you and your show. Anyway, get a podcast, make your podcast the best it can be. The place to do that is dfypodcast.com/free. We will see you there, so that way you can claim your 12 podcast boosters. There are 12 specific things that you can and should keep in mind, whether you have a new or existing podcast. So go to dfypodcast.com/free to find out all about that, and we will see you there.